Welcome. Here we are, Luxembourg 2026 TROGSS, the Robotic Global Surgical Society. We're so excited once again to be across the pond over in Europe and our first time doing an international, the cutting edge. And this guest today is Dr. Sharona Ross. She almost doesn't need anybody to discuss anything about her background. She's been everywhere, world-renowned, past president of Society of Robotic Surgery, Society of Laparoscopic Surgery. She's once again world-renowned hepatopancreatic biliary surgeon. And you'll see her face pretty much any major conference you go to around the world. But we are so excited to have her here. Dr. Sharona Ross, welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
I want to make one more thing. We've switched out another world-renowned surgeon. Dr. Santiago is going to join us on the panel, but he's not the main character in this show. This is going to be all about Dr. Ross.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Ross, my understanding is you've been on the cutting edge of telesurgery, and that's really where the world seems to be going. We've brought this up a couple of times, but you've helped set, I think, some of the guidelines on it, and you're really the one seeing down into the horizon where this is going. Could you kind of walk us through your thoughts on the modern position of telesurgery in the field?
Yeah, so telesurgery actually exists in certain countries. Just in the U.S., it's going to take a little bit more of organizing it. But before I go into telesurgery is telepresence. That's where it all starts because it will be relating to open operation, laparoscopic, and robotic. So it can, where surgeons really can help other surgeons. I'm chairing, like I told you before, I'm chairing the telepresence task force for SAGES. And that's like, really, I learned so much, because I was always telesurgery, but there's so much that surgeons can help other surgeons in different communities with teleproctoring, telementoring, telepresence, where you're in a different even country or different state where you need the help and you don't need to take control over the instrument and operate, but assist them, be there. And so that's, I think, is going to be incredible once it's being adopted. And once we're just about to publish the first white paper, SAGES white paper about telepresence. So it's incredible. I mean, what I've learned going through the process, because I always thought robotics, which I still think robotics, but we can help so many more with the telepresence abilities. And then in robotics, you can take it to a whole other level with what telesurgery and telementoring collaboration can help other surgeons around the world.
It's my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I think India is actually on the forefront of this. It's
Correct.
my understanding that
Correct.
that the Indian subcontinent, you guys have already accepted almost at a political level. It's been accepted as a standard, as considered okay, accepted by the government. Correct?
We young surgeons, we look up to. There is a surgeon called Dr. Mohit Bhandari. He does a lot of telesurgeries in India. We are aspiring to become like him, one day or the other.
And it's intercontinental, even is
Yes.
operating from
He has
Australia
operated
to
from
India.
Perth to India.
Really?
Yeah.
And when you talk about like what he's been doing, what does it look like in India in terms of telepresence or telesurgery?
He has been mentoring many young robotic surgeons and also proctoring many robotic surgeons in India. He is currently the head of IRCAD in India. So he's also training other surgeons, motivating them to be practice the telemedicine as well.
And Dr. Ross, I mean, obviously you've been around the field for decades now, and you're an expert in what you do. Where do you see it being the most beneficial?
Well, first of all, I neglected to mention Vip Patel. Vip Patel, who is right, he started with telesurgery. He's in the U.S., but he's operating with telesurgery all around the world. I mean, incredible. So he's just shout out to him when we mention anything with telesurgery. That's Vip Patel. And then, what's the question again?
So when you talk about the telepresence, though, I mean, as you said, everybody thinks telesurgery, and Gagne going back to 2002 when he did the Strasbourg to the U.S. But really, in the telepresence mold, where is the bigger advantage really going to come from? Is my question.
Yeah. So I think first of all, when you think about rural communities where they don't have the experts necessarily, and they need some help, instead of sending the patient to a different hospital, a different city, state, and the whole family has to travel. So having that ability to help the local surgeons do it, and for the patients to stay in the same town where the hospital is, I think is a great advantage. But also within the systems, like corporate, right? Like you have multiple hospitals and they have surgeons all around. I'm at Advent Health Tampa, but Advent Health as a corporate we can help each other as surgeons using telepresence, teleproctoring, telementoring, all of that once the system is in. So right now it's more regulation and cybersecurity control and all of those things that have to be worked out in order for this to be, introduced into the market, while safety comes first for patients. So we just all have to sit at the table and make sure that we're doing it right in the U.S. But globally, it's already done. So, and it's just going to continue to grow. India were one of the first, but it's really, I think China is also
Doing a lot.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
so-
just to piggyback on that, it's really about democratizing and decentralizing
Correct.
surgical expertise.
Correct.
I train in the Philippines, but think about it. It's a bunch of islands. You can't really get a specialist surgeon in almost every island.
Correct.
It's like places like that, like geographical isolation. And of course, thank God for the US military. I think that was like one of the first interests for developing telesurgery. And now that, we're going into the age of space medicine, long-term
Yes.
manned missions, you're going to need surgical expertise for
Correct.
that as well. So I think it really goes beyond just being like an academic center or a tier 1 city doing telesurgery. The major benefit really lies for rural communities, geographically isolated areas as well. And again, telepresence, like you said, what I saw in India is that with most of the Indian platforms that has telesurgery enabled, you can really see the surgical community coming together to train younger surgeons to get into complex procedures. Like my mentor, Dr. Sudhir Srivastava with SSI Mantra, he started the platform mainly to revive robotic cardiac surgery. And he's one of the few people, he returned back to India to revive robotic cardiac surgery in India, and he's training almost all the surgeons there in doing TCABs and robotic mitral replacements, all of it. And he sits in his office, works from home as he's doing these surgeries. And he even did one surgery from his living room with a patient in the hospital. So if you think about it, I really find it kind of sad. Like if you're like someone who's 80 years old, has 40 years of surgical experience, where do you put that? And you have to put that back in your trainees. And telesurgery is like a really good way, and telepresence is a really good way to bring that back into the field.
Correct.
Yeah, I think what we really, sometimes we forget it's where we started, right? For someone like Sharona and I, we literally travel the world, not only speaking, but you're proctoring, you're teaching these things. And even though we want to believe that we really reach a lot of surgeons and a lot of hospitals or populations, it was really limited. So it was international. That was proctoring. Now all of a sudden you see the telementoring or telepresence, and then the telesurgery. They're all, if you really think about it, they're all a continuum of where we started and we wanted to accomplish. The telepresence, it's a wonderful thing, and I have to confess, this is actually has reignited my interest in doing what we used to do. Because getting on a plane and flying across the world constantly to go proctor someone with the different politics of the hospital was quite challenging. But this is in reality something that is truly global. We can be in the middle of, you name that country, and you can have access to that. So the telepresence, let's just start with that, is just allowing us to basically reach corners of the world that before we were not. Before dealing with just having the platform, I think that's really not an issue anymore. And then if you see the telesurgery, let's say, for example, you're mentoring this person with a telepresence of something that coaching or just give a different perspective, but we were never able to touch the patient. Now open your eyes and all of a sudden imagine that, all right, you're doing great, but let me see if I can take over here for a second, and then let's complete this, all in the interest or the best interest of the patient, right? And also to be able to train surgeons the same way that it's difficult to go and proctor. Well, it's difficult with a lot of our surgeons to travel across the world to come and train, or they don't have the different capabilities, regardless of the platform that you're using. Sometimes you just basically that knowledge to be able to dial up is there for you. I think that's actually the greatest thing, right?
I think it's brilliant. But my question then, and I mean this in a really very, what does that reimbursement model or that overall financial structure or that political structure have to look like, where you determine, one, who those people are going to be, and then two, how you're going to allow them into these, because I think you're going to run into a couple of things. Obviously, you're going to have the surgeons on one side saying, I don't need the help, which that's always a problem.
Right.
But on the other side, you're busy surgeons. I mean, you're right now you're traveling, you're getting paid for the travel, you're getting paid to go do this. But now the insurance company's going to cover that? Is the government going to come in and say, look, this is the safest way to do it? Because I do think that surprisingly, patient safety and good outcomes doesn't necessarily drive our financial decisions in the system.
Right. And I think clearly things are going to start regionally. That's why you have it in India, right? You have a lot of telesurgery boards within India, right? There's going to be a lot of laws. There's going to be a lot of Congress and things that you got to get together. So it's going to be something that will be regional. I think if we start crossing border lines, so what we call that is going to have to be governments, and sometimes someone's going to have to take the ownership. Or like, you're talking about NATO, you're talking about organizations amongst different people to be able to, in the best interest of humankind, our patients, be able to cross those borders. But at the beginning, it's totally going to be a regional thing. If you're in China or Japan, to cross those borders, it's going to be an effort.
You're going way bigger than I am. I meant just in like the U.S. I mean, I don't see, just how we're going to do it. And I mean, Dr. Ross, you brought up a list of things that I'm sure surgeons don't realize are all problems that we still have to solve in the field. If you would just dig down into some of those, maybe that'll answer my question.
Well, there's the SRS. We had a whole meeting back in this year in February regarding telesurgery, and that's when we wrote, and it's about to be published, about the consensus. There's so many things. We had people from the FDA, from IT, from engineering, and surgeons. We had everybody there, because it's not a simple fix. And I admire in India how you guys it made it happen. But in the U.S., it's just much more difficult, and not for the wrong reason. We have to think about how do we handling the patients, and when we take the responsibility and we help some other surgeon, what's the liability? There's so many different things. The hospital's liability, the surgeon's liability. We don't have the relationship with the patient themselves because we never met the patient. So for me, I feel like the relationship with the patient is really important. And that's when they really understand what they're about to go through and all that. But if you as the expert is coming into the place, but you never interacted with the patient and know, what they don't know, what the family knows, I think that part is very important for the success of this kind of technology, and the whole market needs to adjust politically, intellectually. They need to understand. Knowledge needs to be there, and the organizers of this whole telesurgery from every perspective have to be at the table.
And it really brings a lot of anxiety in from the patient side of things as well, which is what we see in India. I think a really common thing they always say is like, if I'm paying you here, but you're not in the building.
Correct.
That's what India has mastered for a short period of time. Is the surgeon who's operating from different place has already spoken with the patient through telemedicine. Like virtually they have spoken to the patients attend the surgeon who's operating there in their own city. So there is a previous communication which has happened already. And the patient gets to know that there is one person, this surgeon, who is around 2,000, 3,000 kilometers away from here, is going to help this surgeon or be a second assistant or third assistant, or going to get inside when things get complicated. So patient is very well aware of this setting and they're getting into it. The proper consent is obtained. The one thing this happens, I will not say flawless, but goes hand in hand in India is, we have a centralized license. So if you are a surgeon from southern part of India, you can very well practice in the northern part of India. You can very well practice in the eastern part of India. You can practice anywhere in India because we have a centralized license, medical license for surgeon. So that one thing is making it possible for the surgeons to operate within India.
And I think, and that'll be a great thing to do. Obviously, we can't cross borders and practice in a different state, but we actually have another limiting factor that's really, really big in the United States, and it's patient's confidentiality.
Right.
And we need, you probably remember this. When we started, we were set up to do telepresence a long time ago. We wanted to start doing, and I'm not going to say the hospital system, right? But we were all set up, and the legal team had a lot of issues with it. And even though it was just projecting from the room, there was a lot of fears of information getting hacked, confidentiality. So it's like at the beginning, no one really accepted, ACH transfers, or we're not going to put your bank account and pay for something. We're kind of in that kind of a situation where the main thing is, it's a credentialing is one thing, trying to help the surgeons is another one, is the information that has been transmitted in the airways, and this particular reason definitely not airways, but it's very protected by the government and by the population. So they have their medical information there that someone can actually get access to in one particular way. So that's one why a lot of the legal teams in the U.S. we have a lot of issues with that.
So if we compare pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, do you think that really has pushed a little bit more emphasis on telepresence and telesurgery, especially in the U.S.?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not only that,
question.
I think, and probably Sharona agrees with me, it has changed the way we practice medicine completely. It has changed the amount of time we keep the patients in the hospital, the expectations that we do. We never heard of sending colectomies or low anterior sections home the same day.
Right.
That was completely unheard of. And I can guarantee you that all your HPV and upper GI procedures were in the hospital for quite some time. And we dare venture because it was a necessity. Having said that, it's funny, right? Because said we can only do the cancers and the things that are really important.
Right.
But then the colonoscopies were not, or the upper endoscopies were not important, so we're not doing those. So we were able to do cancers, but we're not finding them. So, and that actually has a change dramatically in the way that we actually practice.
And it's also bleeding into diagnostics as well. Like I've been seeing a lot of data on doing telemammograms and then tele-ultrasounds and stuff like that. And then again, to piggyback on this, talking about hospital systems and how they see telesurgery as well, we had a couple discussions in South India about this, because most of the time surgeons are always like the cash cows when it comes to a surgical center. They don't want to share the expertise outside because this is my star surgeon for my star hospital, right? But when it comes to if Dr. Hefner's scrubbing in for surgery today, and if it's telesurgery, you could be operating in 8 hospitals. And most hospitals, who are, again, managed mostly by these equity firms, they're looking at profit sharing. So what if this increases your ability to do more cases, and now you'll be expected to do more cases, so where you don't have to travel to these hospitals where they're like, well, you're sitting in your office, of course you can do 20 cases a day. There's no issues for that. Is there a way to protect the surgeons against it as well? And again, this would be great as you talked about the consensus for telesurgery. How do we protect the surgical community also from expectations from the hospital administration side?
Yeah, I do think that you bring up a point. Anybody that's been in the hood for 8, 10, 12 hours straight, there is a mental tax that you pay. And I don't always realize until you get up and you pull your head out and you're like, wow, my brain's definitely been tired. Especially the more complex it is, the more you're concentrating. And I do think that is a problem we would run into as hospitals want to push the efficiency. And you want to take the extreme end of that Pareto distribution and optimize them to do as much of your work as possible because it limits liability. So in that scenario, I could see this being problematic. Is there a way around it, though?
Well, I think that I don't see. So my normal cases can take from 4 to 8 hours. You know what I mean? Correct. So that's one case. So it's, for me, it's never about that, but it's how can I make it where, like, let's say when you use the robot in one place and you can do, it's almost like telesurgery, but you are sitting in one place
like
and then you connect
model.
you keep on flapping, moving between the different rooms. So it's more efficient time-wise. But you have the teams in the different rooms, and you keep on. You're done with that case, and then you go to a different room and you start operating there. You become more efficient. So it depends on how you look at things. For me, it's not about like how many hours I'm doing. How many people can I help? How many surgeons can I assist in a day to do that? And so my goal is not to be home and operating on a platform. It's you need the contact with some patients. So it's telesurgery to a certain extent, but then you have to have your own practice. That's how I see it. The way that would satisfy me, because I need the contact with the patient, but I can help others to do what they would like to do or wherever they need assistance. But in general, you just need to think that way of it's improving efficiency. But then you can have to cover the surgeons, because if they're helping somebody, you can't then sue them for something. So has to be somewhere where the law protects the patient, protects the surgeons with this new technology.
And keep in mind, I just want to make the comment. When we started proctoring, and even if you were doing telesurgery and you're probably doing 20 colectomies in a day, you'll be a superstar if you can do that. But regardless, my point being, there's a group of well-trained, or at least in-training surgeons on that particular line of the channel.
Right.
That the goal is, like when we started doing, I started a lot of programs in Brazil, just to give you an example. And the turn of plan finally was, let's go and do the cases. I will actually go every other week, and we're going to do these cases, but with a plan and a goal of eventually that surgeon being trained and learn what they need to do, and then it doesn't have to continue, right? So I see this more of I'm not going to sit in my pajamas on Sunday and I'm going to do a case, but actually this way I can reach a surgeon quite far with physical barrier limitations that we can repeatedly do the case until he can fly.
Correct.
And that's basically what I'm seeing.
As an engineer, though, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because here's the reality of, I think, what plays out. I have a Dr. Santiago, I have a Dr. Ross, and they can do that case in 4 hours versus 6, 8, 10. Because when I was proctoring the robot, the problem is I knew I could do this in 20 minutes. I got to do it for 3 hours. So as the person can do it in 20 minutes, what's the efficiency for me to get them up to speed? And let's say a certain percentage will never get up to speed. If you're the insurance company or the financial side of this, you're going to say, why am I paying you and them to do this case where they're never going to get to where you're at, where I can just pay you to sit on your butt and do 20 of those in a day? Because that's where the efficiency, and I think that it's optimal from a surgery standpoint to say we don't want to get there, but the pressures of our system aren't driven by what the surgeons want. They're driven by what the system wants. And that's my fear, is that the system is going to push us in that direction.
But you have to have the system also understand that it's not just the operation. Then there's the post-op care. And then there's all the expenses that come to the hospital with the post-op care. So it's not just doing the surgeon, doing the operation, and then the other teams locally that take care of the patient. It's you teaching the surgeon to do the operation, but then the surgeon is responsible for caring for the patient post-operatively. So you need the whole system to work together. It's not just doing the operation. It's how do you care for the patient afterward in order to get the best outcomes that will benefit the hospital as well.
But I'm going to go back to India then for that, because if you look at the cardiac surgeries in India, they've become some of the most efficient systems in the world in terms of economics, and they've gotten it down to 2 to 3% of the cost that we run in the United States to run the same one, because the surgeon only does the operation and everything else is different doctors pre-op, different doctors post-op, and it's really become almost a industrial level ability to push through, and their data is better than ours.
And it's
Or at least
cost effective
equivalent.
as well, because that's really taking back a lot of practice.
That's why India is in the talks now to enact a law on skill exploitation.
Exactly.
With all the telesurgeries going on and the advancements, the legal team of India is in early talks to implement a law on skill exploitation, to set a time frame, to set what a surgeon can do, what a surgeon cannot do, how long can he do, what and all is limitations. They are in the early talks now. We are expecting another 2-3 years for the law to be completely enacted.
Yeah. No, it's just the thing is they've taken the idea of efficiency to an extreme that and I'm not saying it's the right answer either. My fear is if we're not cautious and proactive in how we manage this transition, it's going to be problematic for us as surgeons. Because what you said, caring about patients is the patient in our world, not the technique or the surgery.
Correct.
Just from a past experience, because that happened in Brazil. So we had the public system that were actually, the plan was for me to come proctor and teach them, and eventually there was no more need. But then there was a private sector. And the private sector actually saw that it was more efficient to actually pay someone from the outside. So that did happen. And that was actually with Dr. Para, and we actually did a lot of that in Brazil. But once a local surgeon is exposed and they're seeing it, because they have to take care of the patient either pre-op or post-op, eventually they'll catch on. And then you no longer need it. So it's kind of how it actually happens, right? You get the exposure, you see it at the beginning, you're not correct. Once you start seeing it, you learn it, and then you no longer need it. And hopefully that happens around, right? It just probably there'll still be some contracts from the Middle East because they happen, right? And they call the the surgeon from another country that's quite
Right.
efficient, and someone really needs an operation. And having that capability, I mean, that's a different ball of wax, right? But can all the population in that country have the same access to the possibility to do that? I don't think so, right? So, I mean, that's another way to see the.
And again, from an engineering point of view, like telecommunication is just getting better and better. I think more remote you get, as long as you have the technology, you can connect everywhere. Even like Starlink coming to India, we're just gonna bomb off on telesurgery. It's just gonna happen.
Right.
And I'll go back to the other, and this is always the foundation of all of this, and Dr. Ross, you brought this up first, liability.
Yeah.
And so it goes to,
Yeah.
with the lawyers, if the lawyers don't know who they're suing, then that's the problem. They want to know who they're pointing the finger at. And in this scenario, once again, though, if I can have Dr. Ross, and at first you come in, you're going to help me do the hard part, and then the hospital's like, well, if she's already on board, she can do it faster, and she's already able to operate, why isn't she doing most of it? And then your name's over it, but really you were doing it or he's doing it because it's faster, it's more efficient, and less. And especially if you've made a law, that's like if we made a law that said, well, the telepresence isn't going to be liable, almost like the vaccine laws where the vaccine comes, you're never liable. Well, that makes it perfect then, because then you could. So whatever you try to do to subordinate or to make it equal, it's going to just lead to some reinforcement one way or the other. Where I think we're forcing ourselves down that pathway. It's going to be a tough solution. What's the conversation on that look like? Is my question. I mean, you're as a leader in the field, Dr. Ross. Where's that looking on the liability question?
It is tough. I mean, we're still working through those questions. I mean, it is tough. I can't give you one, answer that will be the way. It's.
Where's the debate leaning currently that you've seen?
It's more each. So the person that comes to help as the expert wants to not be liable, but it should be the person that is local, but they're just helping. The problem is that what I see with liability is there's no relationship. A lot of like lawsuits and all that, it's not just, surgeons always come with the intention to help. Nobody comes wanting to hurt anyone, right? Especially somebody that is here coming to help somebody else, to help their patient. So there's no bad intention, but it's almost like when that happens, that person is responsible, and it really is tough to that person, in order for that to work, needs to have some protection, but the control should be with the person, and that's for teleproctoring, telementoring. For telesurgery, if that person is doing the work by himself or herself, then the liability is with that surgeon. But that, again, needs to be worked out into two different locations, hospitals, and for me, it's all about the team. So for me to do the operations I do, it's the team, it's the strength of the team and the quality of the team that makes it happen. So if you're working somewhere else, as long as it's your team there, otherwise how can you get to the high level that you usually get? Because robotics, you relying on the team. You have to have the instrument that needs to be exchanged, some suctioning, some this. I mean, there's always a team that has to be very, very proficient and very qualified to assist in those big operations, to get to the hours and to the times and the qualities that surgeons in a specific location that can reach. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but I think for telesurgery per se, if it's not teleproctoring or telementoring, the responsibility lies on that surgeon. And that's where the relationship with the patient and the hospital and a lot of other things that needs to come into play. And that's why it takes so long in the U.S., because it's got to be right for the patient, number one, and for the surgeons and hospitals and everyone else that is involved.
Yeah, exactly. I'd piggyback to that. Who's going to be paying your malpractice?
Correct.
Is the hospital going to allow you to you still are, if you're employed by an institution,
Correct.
and you're taking the time to actually do cases somewhere else, so it's not the same, right? You're actually, that's a conflict in your contract. I mean, you can't offer any medical advice or services that are not within your contract. So there are a lot of things that you'll probably have to do it in your off time, but then we talk about liability, who's paying you malpractice and who's gonna, because you have to assume the liability. I'm sorry, you can be in China and doing surgery in Puerto Rico, but if you are the one moving those arms, you're responsible for that, right? So that's, again, like Dr. Ross said, there's a lot of unanswered questions that need to be worked out. Confidentiality of the patient, crossing states, even countries. That's even probably I see in another country probably will be easier than actually do it within the United States, right? And like when we proctor.
Are there any conversations around insurance coverage for telesurgeries presently going?
The
in the US?
discussions, but there's no
I'm guessing it comes back to the liability question again.
Yeah, because we don't have a unified
Correct.
insurance for basically per state.
Right.
And sadly enough, within the U.S., even the health system, it goes by region. So you can live in Tampa, and then Clearwater has a completely different health systems in terms of where you can go and get your services. Otherwise, you're what we call out of network, and you won't pay. So that opens another Pandora's box. That how are we going to manage that? Right?
When you list the problems that we still have to face, I suspect that we're going to be having automated robotic surgery before we ever figure out the liability. It's going to be the same questions, and it's going to be like, we'll get to that, and we're like, well, why do we worry about it? We'll let the robot do it, because you're talking about major structural issues that would require almost fundamental changes in systems before you're going to really solve these problems.
The health system, political system, government system, probably the Autobots are probably going to be doing the surgery by themselves by the time we figure that out.
The liability question is, I think, the biggest one. It's because you run into that. I mean, you'd have to restructure almost the entire malpractice system to really get that, to solve that. And that's going to involve lawyers. And once you involve lawyers, we'll solve a lot of bigger problems before we get to that.
But even though other countries are like leading in the telesurgery space, I'm pretty sure US is doing it right. It's better to make policies before you deal with complications than go back and cover up complications with policies. Yeah.
Right, and you always, it's interesting that we're talking about telesurgery, but we haven't talked about latency and all the medical records and radiology and how they get connected into everything that is built into the robots, and where robots are going, automation and training and all that. I mean, there'll be great things that are coming, but it's got to come right, and everything needs to be worked out together, where surgeons are sitting at the table, engineers, IT, hospital administration. I mean, everybody needs to sit together and make those consensus and decisions regarding patient care.
Well, we're coming to a close, and so I just want to leave Dr. Ross the opportunity for her, I would say, your wisdom statement. So after all of your years and everything you've accomplished, what is the thing that you want to share to the audience that you've learned that really kind of is fundamental to your belief system in surgery?
Wow. For me, it's all about the patient. When you put the patient at the center, and that's what I tell to the residents and medical students and fellows that I work with, you never need to wonder what she's going to do in whatever situation it is. It's always going to be what I think is best for the patient. When you think about the patient, what the patient would benefit most from, that's what I'm going to do. I love innovation, and embracing technology is for that technology that is good. I always tell the engineers that come to my operating room, look, if you're sensitive, don't come. I'll tell you exactly what I think. But I'm also going to tell you how can we make it better. So I love innovation, especially that makes patients' outcomes better. And so what I would say, always look up to grow. And if you're feeling comfortable with one way of doing something, and for that reason you're not going to want to change, that's when you should be retired, because you as a surgeon constantly have to want to grow, because the way what I do today is nothing to what I was trained when I was young. And so when I was young, I'm older now, but you know what I mean? It was like nothing. It was open operations. But everything that I do now is not what I saw then, but it's only by embracing new technology, bringing it to your practice, and bringing it to your patients, and seeing your patients doing well. So what I would say, always want to grow, want to learn, and want to improve patients' outcomes. And if you do that, and that's what rewards me, you'll be a great surgeon. and you're always going to succeed because you have your mind is in the right place.
That's a great piece of wisdom. A lot of great advice from the entire panel, and I can't thank you enough for joining us here in Luxembourg 2026, the Robotic Global Surgical Society, or TROGSS, first national or international conference. So thank you so much. We'll see you on the next episode.